Hi, I'm Jamie Schmidt, and today I'm going to walk you through the DNA and the history of the drill driver, specifically the cordless drill driver, but I will give you the history of the drill in a moment. But the reason for these videos are to help people who are DIYers or want to be DIYers get the answers to the questions that maybe they might not know to ask or are afraid to ask. And I think we've all kind of been there, where something has come up where you think it might be a silly or a basic question and you don't want to see somebody go, you don't know that? I hate that, and I would never do that to somebody who asks me a question. And I think this video would hopefully help people go through what these are, what to expect from one, and what to look for in them so you can get the right drill for you. Does that make sense? Hopefully, fingers crossed. So let's dive into the history. So electric drills have not been recently invented. They've actually been around for quite a while. The first electric drill was actually invented by an Aussie back in 1889. His name was Arthur James Arnott, and he developed the electric drill to help out with drilling into rock, coal, mining basically. It was a lot of mining work. And it was definitely not portable. It was plug-in and electric, but it was not portable. Now the first portable drill was invented in 1917 by the company called Black & Decker. They're still around. They invented the first portable drill with a pistol grip and a trigger. Now that was a very important step in this whole process because it made it a lot more comfortable to use, and it led to the incarnation that you're kind of seeing here. Now they didn't invent the first battery operated cordless drill until 1961, and that was also by Black & Decker. Now there was a whole thing going around that everyone believed that NASA was the one that invented the cordless drill, and they have cleared that up, and they said no, we did not. It was still Black & Decker in 1961, but in the 60s, Black & Decker did work with a company called Martin Marietta to come up with a zero impact wrench that they could use up in space. And the reason being for that is, these are the impact drivers. The reason for that is that in space, once this thing started meeting resistance, the astronaut would spin. And that is something they did not want for obvious reasons. So they invented the zero impact wrench. So it was not NASA that invented the cordless drill. It was still Black & Decker back in 1961. And these things have become an invaluable tool to have in your toolbox. And I'll go through the individual parts right now, and hopefully you'll know which one to get for yourself once I do that. Alright, so let's go through the basic features of what a drill driver is and what all the parts on the drill driver do. So a drill driver basically means it does two different things. It drills things and it drives things. So you can use your drill driver to drill things with either, say, a spade bit or a drill bit, but you can also put in screw attachment where you can use fasteners to fasten things together. Let's start at the very beginning or very front of the drill driver and go from this beginning. So this is called a chuck, a keyless chuck to be more exact. Now in the olden days, maybe you saw it with your grandfathers or grandparents' drill, and they used to have what's called a key, and you used to put it in there and then wrench it down and it would tighten whatever you put in here. And this was a good system. It effectively really closed it in there very tightly, but you ended up losing these, you ended up skipping this and busting knuckles. So there's no reason that these would be used in anything that you would purchase nowadays. They're kind of a thing of the past and maybe probably only used in more industrial uses. So that's really not something you'd use, but I'm giving you the history of it. So the keyless chuck works very simply. If you turn it counterclockwise, if you're facing it counterclockwise, that loosens up the jaws inside and loosens up whatever you have inside of it. Now if you do it the opposite way, clockwise, it'll tighten that in there, and a little ratchet there on this one, it'll tighten it in extra hard, so that bit will not come out. Now the way that, say, someone who's used a drill more often will use it will be that they will use the forward reverse buttons on here, lightly hold this to loosen up the chuck and put it in the other opposite direction and tighten it up. Now I didn't have a hard grip on there, so I want it to spin, but it's in there very snugly right now, and then I'll turn it a little bit more to tighten it fully. So that is the chuck. Moving our way back here, we're going to look at the torque control. Now this is very important for DIYers especially, and how, if, like, say, I'll give you an example, like putting hardware on the back of a frame, you get those little tiny screws. Those are notorious for stripping out if you use too much torque, too much turn on your drill. It's going to strip that screw out, and then you got to either move it, which can be kind of a pain if you have to have it centered, or you have to repair it, and that's just a pain in the butt. So this is very important for that. And as far as it goes from, and the numbers vary, it could be from like 1 to 10, or this one's from 1 to 20, and each one basically is either an increase or decrease in the amount of force it's going to use to tighten that fastener. And once it reaches the amount of force, it'll actually stop. So on one, the lightest setting, I actually can hold on to this, hit the trigger, and it'll stop. It'll go, but it needs that resistance, it'll stop. Now, the higher the number, the more turning torque will actually be used, and it will be meet at a higher resistance, so it'll drive whatever it is in harder and deeper than it was with a lower setting. So the higher I go up, the harder it is for me to stop it. And going all the way up to the highest setting, which would be 20 in this case, but it actually is a picture of a drill, meaning it won't stop. So if you see that drill setting right there, you see right there, that means it will not stop. It'll be continuous in drill mode. And that is also the only setting you would use when you're using a drill bit. So fasteners would be used, all these torque settings up into that, and drills would be using nothing but that drill mode. I say that in as far as I can't see it being used, why a torque setting would need to be used for a drill setting, but I'm sure there's a circumstance. If you have a circumstance like that, you can put it in the comments below. But that generally is what the torque control does on a drill driver. The next thing that we're going to look at is the gear control switch. It's right here. Now there's two numbers, 1 and 2 on this drill. 1 goes fast, but it's slow, and by comparison of number 2, which is much faster. 1, 2. What does this mean? Number 1 is a high torque setting. And what that means is the slower, the stronger it is. So it's applying more force at a slower rate towards whatever you're doing. So say you're using the number 2 setting, the very fast setting, and you're doing fasteners really quickly. And you're putting a 3-inch screw into a harder type wood or a thick piece of material. And you suddenly get to where it kind of strips out or cams out, or it just kind of bogs down and doesn't go any further. If you switch it to the number 1 setting or the higher torque setting, it'll actually keep going much stronger, much further, and probably drive that screw in. Can't say that for sure depending on your project, but it applies a lot more muscle at a slower rate. So it goes to different gears basically. So slower, higher muscle, slower, stronger. The faster one will definitely be used for things like a spade bit, because you want speed in that circumstance, or a drill bit. You want to get that up to a higher rate of speed whenever you're drilling, because it feeds the material out a lot faster and eats through it much faster. The next thing we're going to be looking at, I think I touched on this before, is a forward and reverse switch on here. Obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory. One goes backwards, one goes forward. So you can pull a fastener out, a screw out, or you can obviously put a fastener in, or drilling. Once you drill through something, sometimes you need to back it out. So you'll hit reverse to back it out. That's pretty self-explanatory. One feature on this drill, which I think is fantastic, which is something you might want to look for, is if it has a lock setting. So it's forward, reverse, but in the middle is a lock setting, which means I cannot get this to go. Now, why is that important? As a professional, I have a big, massive pile of tools in a tool bag, and I just throw my stuff in there. That's just the way things are. But when I've done that in the past, and I've had drills that did not have a lock setting, I've thrown it into my tool bag, it goes in, hits on something, and does this until my battery's dead. And the next time I want that tool and it's dead, it's worthless to me unless I have extra batteries. So it's a great setting to have to make sure that if you have charge in your battery and you want to keep it that way, put in that lock setting. The other thing is the pistol grip, which is nice and comfortable. Make sure it's comfortable in your hand. Try the different ones in the store, see which one's comfortable to you. The trigger is very important, and also the variable speed trigger is very, very important to me because it allows me flexibility to do different things. Why is that important? It's basically control. You need to have control over your tool. And if it's all or nothing, say if you turn the trigger on, which my dad has a cordless drill, it's an older one, but it goes on, off, and on, off, on, off, on. That's it. There's no in between. So if you're doing a delicate project where you need to put a screw in or drill something very slowly just to begin to get it, get your pilot hole started or something like that, you want to have that control to go very slowly. If you go very fast, it might drift, or you might strip out the screw. So what this does is it allows you to apply, when you apply a little bit of pressure to the trigger, you can have it go slow, a little more pressure, faster, 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 until you get to full speed. It allows you control. You can go really slow, in certain there, like that. You can go real slow in some circumstances. It really allows you more flexibility depending on your project, and flexibility is key. I can't give you, why that would be important in every circumstance, but when you need it, you will be happy that you have that. Batteries. Quickly go through the batteries. This is a 12-volt battery. They are probably the most common for DIYers and handymen. This tool is very small. It fits in a lot of tight spaces. It delivers a decent amount of power. There's 4 to 8 levels of battery, which I really wouldn't suggest you going through or getting. I think they're more throwaway or kind of gimmicky, kind of tools just to sell a tool to somebody. 10 to 18 is really the range I'd like to see you in, because they'll handle most projects. 18 definitely will, my plumbers and electricians, they all use 18s for the most part. Anything over that is for, you pretty much know you need that kind of power. They have a 28 volt, which it's basically the equivalent of having a plug-in almost. I've used this for paddle mixing concrete in a bucket, drywall mix, pour bowling through studs for conduit and things like that. It really comes in handy that. But again, look at this. It's size difference. I mean, that's what you're looking at. And it's also much heavier, but again, much more power, much longer lasting. For 90% of the things that you probably want to use, this is the best thing for you. It also has, and this is important, a battery indicator, and you'll see it right about there. There's 4 dots, and then I don't know if you can see it, when I pull the trigger, it'll actually light up with how much juice is left in that battery. I think it's kind of important, and I think all of them should have something like that, because with the newer type lithium batteries, they'll give you 100% of their charge until they die. So it will die instantly. So you won't know when you need to charge that battery. So hopefully you'll have an extra battery charged up and ready to go. But if you don't, you can plan your work schedule saying, you know what, I can do this while I charge my battery, so I got 100% battery. It's a great thing to know to have, so you can see how much juice is left in your battery. So that's another important thing. So hopefully I've given you a good overview of what these things are, maybe features to look for. If you have any questions that I haven't addressed on here, be sure to ask them below. If you look at my other videos, you'll see that I love that interaction with people. If I can help you, I will. Please hit subscribe, because I'm hoping that this will become a series of instructional and basic DIY, carpentry, whatever type tools and equipment. I'm just a tool junkie, so I love teaching people how to use these things and what they all do, breaking it down basically. Hit subscribe, and then you'll be up to speed on all the new videos once they come out. So until next time, good luck.